Okay, for the 8. In the resistance pattern, this is inconsistent, not caring for the body, and emotionally frozen. So, with the 8, a person is naturally more sensitive than others. So what happens is that when this child comes into the world that naturally has a greater sensitivity than others, when they experience different emotions, it hits them harder. And that's very painful. And as a child, of course, we don't have the tools mentally, emotionally to deal with certain challenges in life. So the defense mechanism, the survival mechanism for a child is to take these painful emotions and stuff them down and freeze them in the body. And how this plays out is just trying to forget about it. Okay, I'm just going to lock that away in, part of my mind and just not even feel it, think about it, and put my mind on something else. That's never dealing with the emotionally charged event. But as a child, we don't have tools. We don't have the capacity yet to deal with those in an effective way. So that's really the best we got. And it is useful at that time because it's helping a child survive to the next stage, as opposed to just getting overwhelmed and shutting down from the emotions. So, however, of course, as an adult, that's not effective strategy. Just out of sight, out of mind, because it's really not. And it literally is not only weighing down the subconscious mind, but it's also locked in the body and creating problems in the body. So the key here is going into the emotions. And that's the last thing in the world that the 8s want to do. They do not want to touch their emotions with a 10-foot pole, a 100-foot pole, or a 1,000,000-mile-foot pole. It's the last thing I want to do. But that's actually the key here. And because there's many layers of not wanting to feel, and they can find many ways to not feel, which is just out of sight, out of mind, different substances, all ways to detach from their emotions because those are painful emotions and they don't want to feel them. And it's tough. So that also creates a disconnection with the body because there's a rift between the mind and the body. And naturally, a person with the 8s wants to be consistent, but what's underneath the surface is that if they're consistent with the mind and body connection, if they're consistent, then that'll bring up those old emotions. And if those old emotions come up with, then it's going to be painful to deal with. And last time those emotions came up, there wasn't any tools to deal with them. So then they're just going to be in a person's face. And they say, you know what, I'd rather not. So they unconsciously are inconsistent. And that can show up in many different ways in life. It can show up in business, with the 8s, oftentimes with health. And physical activity will bring up those emotions. That's like a hidden thing about the 8s, is that emotion will connect them, that motion will connect the mind to the body consistently, and then that brings up the emotions. So it's absolutely imperative that you have a tool to deal with these emotions, because the old school way was, okay, let's just go through therapy and let's talk about your emotions and let's use the conscious mind and hopefully, it'll make you feel better airing it off your chest. Okay, sometimes that can help, but a lot of times that's extremely painful in its own right. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to dig up these things that I've been doing everything in my power to not even think about, and then it's just going to be brought up, and then, okay, I guess I'll just see you next week, and the whole week I got to feel these emotions. It's a way to go, but it's definitely a slow lane. And so a faster way is to use the tools that we'll get into in the next module, where you can recognize and own which emotions are there. You don't necessarily need to know the story attached. You can, but you don't need to. You can recognize the emotions are there, use the technique and the method, and then boom, get to the other side where it's positive emotions. And this creates a lot of heaviness in the body. And that's why the tool in the next module is so powerful, because people literally feel the lightness of like, oh, whoa, okay. I didn't even realize I was feeling heavy about that, but I feel so much lighter, so much more loose now, so much more relaxed. So it's your number one goal to, with this 8, is to go into your emotions and process them. I mean, it doesn't mean you need to be on this never-ending journey of processing emotions. You just got to dig in there and have your own way of processing emotions that come up. And as you do that, it'll become natural and easy to be consistent towards your goals. It'll become more and more natural and easy to care for your body, to do the things that are required. And so that's what happens in the genius talent, is that person becomes a master of their emotions. And on that journey of mastery, which takes time, they become consistent. And they have this wonderful mind-body connection. And it becomes an incredible asset, because it's somebody who's really grounded into reality. Because in the beginning, with the resistance pattern, they can be very floaty, very, they're out of touch with their emotions, trying to avoid their emotions. So they're trying to avoid, it's kind of that energy of always trying to just be above the ground, almost be in space, because then if you're in space, you don't have to deal with all the heavy stuff here on Earth. So as a person starts connecting back, it's like what happens is a very interesting thing. It's like they have this ability to be boots on the ground, feet on the ground, connected to reality. But also what happens is, since they've released these layers of emotions, their intuitive channel is open. So they're able to sense into essentially the future, a sense where things are going. So in this analogy, it's like someone who's really anchored here on Earth in the practicality, but then they also have this ability to just sense what's going on up in space with this analogy. So whereas other people are just either, they're just really based in reality, but they can't see the bigger picture, or some people are just bigger picture land and they are out of touch with reality. The genius talent here is to combine and be able to do both, which is incredible. And it's to have an incredible mind-body connection. And also that comes from learning to release attachments of people and things, to let go of the past, because the resistance pattern of the 8s is to cling to things, emotions, people, physical things, and can't let them go, can't let past events. But as you get better at in the genius talent, it's being able to let things go. And it doesn't mean that you're just ignorant and just not even, if someone hurts you, anything like that, but it's understanding, okay, what's the lesson that I got from this particular event? Is there extracting all the value from it? And then when there's no more value to hold on to it, keeping the lesson, of course, but just letting go the rest of the energy. And that's what keeps a person's channel open to sense into the bigger picture, which is incredibly useful. And, I'm here to say that it's going to feel like it's a huge undertaking. And in some ways it is. But really, it's just about getting started. And there's going to be some, bumps in the road of going to your emotions. But more and more, it's going to get easier and easier. And you're going to start seeing the benefits. And once you start seeing the benefits, you'll be more confident on it. Because sometimes people at the 8s feel like they're trapped on Earth, and they'd rather die than engage with their feelings. Like, engaging in feelings, literally, like I said, the last thing I want to do. But I'm here to let you know that pathway is your freedom. And it's important to know what's on the other end of it, because, if we're going to do something that we don't want to do, we want to know that it's for the right reason. And when people come through the other side of their 8s, it's incredible. They're so down to earth while being able to sense into the big picture. They know what's going on emotionally, and they help others do that as well. And the other thing that comes to mind here is boundaries. In the resistance pattern, it's almost like an amoeba here. Their boundaries aren't defined. So it's like, there's things passing in and out that shouldn't be. So that's like, not having boundaries, letting people, take too much time, energy, resources, and it just makes a person feel just used. Whereas in the genius talent, you're so clear on what's going on with your emotions, so clear with your mind-body connection, that you can feel when somebody's overstepping their boundaries with you or even about to. And that's where you can communicate it clearly. So that makes what happens there is you have less emotional junk to deal with to begin with because you solved the problem before it even became a problem. So 8s and the genius talent are phenomenal at creating boundaries that help everybody, because sometimes people want things, but it's not in their best interest. And it's going to create a problem down the road. So if you create boundaries with your relationships, if you create proper boundaries in your business, proper boundaries in your team, everybody thrives. And that's a hidden genius talent at the 8s, is proper boundaries. And that can only happen when there's a certain level of emotional intelligence. So the other thing with this is there is a special connection with animals with the 8s, special connection with animals and nature. So of course, nature is good for everybody. However, with the 8s, the more time you spend in nature, there's a certain special X factor that helps you ground and connect your mind-body connection to the earth. It's very, very, very powerful. And as you release the frozen layers of your own emotions, what happens is it allows you to connect with other people. So in the genius talent, these are people that can connect to the masses. They can connect to people from all different walks of life and feel into where that person's at and communicate to that person in a way that makes sense to them. And that's what we've got for this symbol. One last item I have here to share with you is that this is really about also grounding ideas to the masses. So a person with 8s has a special, unique ability to take a really big picture thing that maybe only makes sense to a few people and filter it in a way so that the messaging, the concepts can reach the masses and reach a lot of people, so that it's not just to a few people that understand. And this is, of course, incredibly useful in business because it allows you to ground and take very, say, esoteric concepts and make it relatable to people. It's all about being relatable to people, both personally and then both in your projects as well, which is incredibly powerful when you're taking a product to the masses.